Hey, this is really done for Vic Perchette, who's just listen. Some of my people who I grew up with, who I haven't seen in years. Some of the people like Jimmy Drum and Vic Perchette, and guys who just solid rock people. You know, I sometimes forget that I spend my life on all this stuff, right? And through my book and my movie and all the stuff at SteveLaffey.com, and because I sort of retired at 38 years old to do other things. But my whole background has been in finance and analyzing these things. That other people don't do this. And so when it comes to the question of the $4 trillion deficit combined with what the Federal Reserve is doing, and people say, so the big question always comes down to this. Peter Hackett will be like, he's just going to vote for the president because it's worse than Democrats because Hackett they just vote Republican. They don't give a rat's whatever. I love them all, by the way, like brothers to me. But that's just what they do, right? So there's people who just do that, and they're going to be like, that's what I'm doing. But the real problem is this, and it's all here in 2006. I mean, 2006 was a year when everybody just went along with Medicare Part D, right? I could name the other things in the book, but I won't. That Republicans had lost their way, right? And because of that, a certain percentage of Republicans said, screw it. And there was a total sweep of Democrats coming in. And I was in that race. I was in the primary. And I told Liddy Dole, I think it's in the book, but I told Liddy Dole, who was a National Central Campaign Committee lady, who backed Link Chafee, even though Link Chafee, again, he was the elected Republican. What did they do? They backed Link Chafee. Nothing personally against Link Chafee. He just was a Republican, like I'm the Pope. The man is, we've been over this 100 times. He's to the far left of Nancy Pelosi. And after defeating me in the primary, the Republican Party, what did Lincoln Chafee do? It's in the book. The first thing he did was make sure that John Bolton did not get to be the permanent representative of the United Nations, even though all Republicans wanted him to be. And even Democrats in the Senate, when he got to the full Senate, because it didn't come out of committee because of Link Chafee, 8-7. So you don't win doing this. In other words, backing Link Chafee is a loser's game. So when it comes to what really have always been basic Republican principles, whether you incorporate Teddy Roosevelt or even John F. Kennedy, who was a Republican, right, in a sense, right, pro-life and so forth, when you back in all these policies, strong national defense, balanced budgets, and so forth, we have very little of that going on with the Republican Party. So as we head into the 2020 election, it is highly unlikely that the United States Senate or the House of Representatives stays Republican. And one of the major reasons is the spending. So as I've said many times, the way to get to President Trump, who, by the way, on the tapes, very clearly, I said as early as September of 2015, on the Jimmy Lakey show, on other shows, that candidate Trump would be the president. And people thought I was nuts. I said he would be because I made this movie. And I've been across the heartland and know that there's actually an electoral college and not a popular vote. And I said he would win Pennsylvania. I said because the first person who talked about communist China would win. Now, we didn't do anything about communist China. I said that's always going to be the problem. Once he wins, he has no ideology. And it was up to us as Republicans to push him to do something about communist China. Right now, what we've done about communist China so far is arrest a couple of people, close down an embassy, and basically make them buy some soybeans that they're not going to buy out of Iowa so he can win Iowa in an election. Literally, that's all we've really done. It took us till like last week to say that we don't believe that the 10-, the 9-, or the 7-, go look this up if you want, South China Sea doesn't belong to communist China. It took till last week. The international courts ruled on that in 2016 and said that China doesn't belong to China. So effectively, we talk and do nothing. But if we had pushed back on that, and I tried to talk to major corporations about doing this, about showing up at Trump rallies with stuff about really doing this to bring manufacturing back here, which we have not done. So we didn't do that. We didn't come close to running any sort of budget surplus. Candidate Trump said he was going to not only balance the budget, but he was going to actually eradicate all the debt. The debt's going to be $30 trillion pretty soon. So these are bedrock Republican issues that no longer exist, except with myself and seemingly Mark Sanford, the former governor of South Carolina, who went around in September to campaign not necessarily against the president, two-time governor, five-term congressman, roughly my age. Mark, you look much older than me. I've met with him. He's a fantastic guy. He's had some personal issues and so forth that have come up over and over again. Fantastic conservative guy. The man raised $65,000 on the issues that all Republicans should care about for their children. Nothing happened. And all that we're left with heading into this election is what? Judges, great job, Mr. President, some deregulation. I really don't know what it is. Other than that, we're left with nothing of what bedrock Republican issues are about, the ones we can actually win on. We have nothing to say to the electorate except one thing: the other party sucks. Joe Biden is falling apart mentally. These aren't winning issues. Can the president still win? He could. Joe Biden's a terrible candidate. Not as bad as Hillary Clinton. It's a terrible candidate. But my major point to all the people who comment is if that's what you're left with, if this is what you're left with, it's not a winning argument. It usually loses. It lost in 2006. I was part of that. I watched it. I watched what the Republican National Party did. And as I said in one of the things, when I ran for re-election in Cranston, Rhode Island, it was a very simple re-election campaign. Remember, I'm an evangelical Christian conservative in Rhode Island, okay? For people who don't live in Rhode Island. I'm not your normal Republican hanging out, doing the whole thing, jibbing and jibing with some of the Democrats. I'm actually firing crossing guards, going after unions, suing members of the school committee personally, never ever backing down, much like the president at the national level when he goes on some tirade. But it's mostly a personal thing, like not going to Lewis's funeral, making fun of John McCain even after he dies. That's stupid, like really sinful stuff. No one should be doing that, whether you disagree or agree. I'm the guy who has all the bones to pick with John McCain. He came into Rhode Island twice to defeat me. But back to the major point, if you want to play this, the major point is that this is destroying our children's future. If you don't have kids, you might have a niece, or you might just simply care about the future before you die. But the age of 58, I got 6 of them. And what we have done as Republicans that are allowed to do, whether it's talk show radio for the most part, go listen. What do they have on? They have on one after the other. Oh, they have a Republican. After I go on the Jimmy Lakey show tomorrow, there'll be some Republican person coming on saying what a great job the president's doing, and they won't even know what to say it's about. When I ran for re-election, very simple. Don't let them back. Big picture, it looked like Traff, not to get on Michael Traff, I can't be the former, he was actually a pretty nice guy. But that was just politics, right? That was corruption from before, from O'Leary, and even before, all the way down. And then, quote unquote, let's finish the job, because there was ultimately real success. So we don't have an immigration success. The wall's not built. It wasn't built by Mexico. The wall's not done. As I railed against those tax cuts as a conservative Republican, it was because it was obviously going to produce bigger deficits. And it had one part of it that I can never accept. I cannot accept filling out a federal tax return by anybody and paying nothing. I learned a long time ago that even if the barber gave you $5 at Cranston, Rhode Island, he was in. And the fact that now over 50% of the people don't pay any federal income taxes. I know they pay Social Security taxes. I know the whole gig, by the way. There's not like, and so the Republican problem is shown up on my Facebook or when I do a radio or when I host a show and people call in. It's not on the important issues. It becomes, how would you like Joe Biden to be president? I don't want Joe Biden to be president. You know? So these are really, really things that people have to pay attention to. And when Republicans act like Democrats, as I told Liddy Dole, that when in Rhode Island, when forced to choose between a faux Democrat, Lincoln Chafee, and a real Democrat, Sheldon Whitehouse, Rhode Islanders will choose Sheldon Whitehouse. 100% I knew that. I was the only one who could have won that race. And the National Republican Party made a giant mistake, and I got a good book deal out of writing this book about it. It's true even more so today. The Republican Party has lost its mind. The only thing that needed to be said, see, when the federal government run by a Republican president and there's a giant problem, whether it's a coming pandemic or whatever it might be, And the initial reaction is, we're going to send you money. What can we do for you? Not, what are you going to do for yourself? And on selective basis, what are we going to do about the 10% of the less of the people who are temporarily disabled? Disabled, not just physically disabled, I mean in trouble. What are we going to do about that specifically? In Medicare Part D with George Bush, we could have helped people who are older, who had a specific problem. Instead, it was a $13 trillion unfunded liability that's never going to get paid back. As Republicans, we should have done something about Social Security. It's now too late. The deficit over going to be $30 trillion. It's now too late. No Republican, including Rand Paul, and who I believe all these people who voted for this are now all finished after this election cycle. Ted Cruz will never be the president. Rand Paul will never be the president. Can you imagine me debating these people, or someone like me debating these people a couple of years from now, and talking about their vote on just sending people who make less than $150,000, $2,400 to a married couple? You take two teachers that we know who taught us growing up who were married. We know plenty of these people. They're on Rhode Island pensions. They probably make less than $150,000. They need $2,400 like a hole in the head. Am I getting through to the people here? Like, there's multi-millionaires that I know who last year just chose not to make $150,000. They get checks for $2,400. Does that make any sense? The giant shotgun. In my office here, I have a rifle. Upstairs is a shotgun. They're different purposes. This shotgun went like that. I have at least a dozen friends who took the PPP money. Every one of them I pleaded with not to. None of them, one of them probably needed to survive. One. All of them would have been better to shut down their businesses and reopen later. All will do a perp walk when Democrats take over because they'll publish every name. This is the part that I don't understand about people. I never give in on freedom. I would much rather, because I'm going to heaven, I would much rather die with my boots on. You will never see me take this stuff. I'm not talking about the checks that get sent out. It's going to be included in your income statement. You might as well just cash them or give them to charity, whatever you want to do. The PPP money, never, ever. I mean, this is stuff, and granted, some people felt like they should have. I get it. People make decisions. I'm not trying to put people down or put people up. What I'm saying is, Republicans, these are losing messages. A much better message. Just before I was on with Jimmy Lakey a couple weeks ago, Newt Gingrich came on. It's on the Jimmy Lakey show, who's a wonderful, great guy. Go play the tape of Newt Gingrich. He has nothing to say about the president's reelection as far as a theme. My theme, don't let them back, let's finish the job. The bond rating was already up 3 times. It was going to go up 8 times. The budget surpluses were there. There were a lot of things happening that weren't complete. But Cranston was saved in the first 3 months with my initial budget. It just took the Democrats didn't figure it out. No, the city didn't figure it out for a couple of years. It was over as far as there was going to be no bankruptcy. The city would recover, and the place that I grew up in would be a semi-normal city for the next 20 years because of what I did. Right? Fully funding pension plans, starting with $9 million scheduled to go to zero, leaving it with $50 million in the bank. Never been done. Never been done. This stuff's never been done. So what we should have done as Republicans, and I tried to do, but I had nobody to help me. Okay? The Tea Party meetings are Republican meetings now, and I love the Tea Party. I love going to any Tea Party meeting I can go to. They're generally Republican meetings. Republicans speak about Republican things. They should be about balancing the budget. Because it's one thing to have a small deficit in a recession every year. We're having deficits every single year as the economy grew from 2010 to 2020 in March. The fact that everybody was so willy-nilly, as Republicans, willing to just send the money out rather than say, because let me tell you something. It's my job to take care of my daughter Sarah, who has cancer. It's not your job. And it ain't anybody else's job. My job. Do you get that? Does anybody get that? It's my job. And if I fail, I'll live with it. It's your job to take care of Uncle Joe, who weighs 400 pounds and can't get this Chinese virus. That's your job, ain't my job. But America's come, that's always the federal government's job. And everybody seems to accept it. Same thing with the public schools. I mean, you want to know what I'm reading this summer? I'm reading this, Thomas Sowell. Get this book. I haven't read it yet. I know what's in it. I'm not reading about modern monetary theory. I know that. It can be summed up in one sentence. Total nonsense. This is about the racists who actually run the public schools who hate young black children. Why? Because they want more money, and they don't want them to be free and be successful. So, I could talk, and I just want this to be on the record. I am totally pissed off, and will remain pissed off, at fellow Republicans who I love dearly, who think this is all part of the game, that we can get things back at some point. When this election cycle's over and Cory Gardner loses by 15 points in Colorado, a dead man walking, Susan Collins, a dead woman walking, McSally, a dead lady walking. I went down to something called, go to the website and scroll down to the bottom, stevelaffey.com. See me wearing some kind of Filson, made in America, by the way. Like this is made in America. These socks, they're friggin' made in America. What is it? I don't have a friend, I don't have a person that I know who adopted the tactics of trying to buy everything made in America. And I know you can't. But I don't think anybody who I know, who I love dearly, even tries. I'm not talking about if you're really rich and you really need a Maserati, go get one. I drive 3 Fords. The tires generally made in America, not the last set, they're made in Nova Scotia. You know what I'm saying? But trying. Who the hell is really trying? And if you're not really trying, how do you expect anybody else to try? Where's the question about what the president is still wearing for his clothes? It ain't made in America. And so I am literally somehow a remnant, way out in left field, talking about things that are ultimately the most important. Manufacturing jobs in America, in the heartland of our country, is the only thing that will bring the middle class back. Defeating China 20 years ago, 10 years ago, in the way I've talked about, is the only way. Fixing Cranston, if I keel over tonight, is the only example you have of what I've done in the public sector. It is a total, unmitigated, 100% success. Every Democrat voted for every budget, and they did not want to every time. And yet, the result is that people seemingly don't seem to care about success. They care about whether they know the person. They care about this political stuff. The time will come again where someone will have to say to the American people, and they're going to have to listen because we're going to be one breath away from extinction, like Cranston was, fiscally. And it may be in America, actually militarily. We are losing militarily. Where someone will have to say exactly what I said standing on a stump. You're not going to like anything I'm going to do. Vote for me, Steve Laffey. No more kissing babies. I love kissing babies. I wish I had more babies. I've got 6 of them. Vote for me. You won't like anything I'm going to do. And Vic, that's the answer. We have to stand for things that nobody likes right now. And if we lose, let me give you one example. Here's the op-ed that I'm not even going to bother to write because no one's going to read it. You see, I could write 10 more books. Nobody's actually doing anything about it. I could make 10 more movies. This movie's totally correct. I told you about communist China in 2005. In 2005, I told you everything that was going to happen if we didn't change our tune. Does it help that it actually happened? Does it help that I'm always right about this stuff? It's not hard to be right about things that are obvious. What happens to everybody is they want to go along and get along and be part of the crowd. I do not. And the people who know me from childhood knew I never did. Never did. So everybody, listen, needs to get their friggin' act together. Because we are failing. And if Hillary Clinton was president, here's how the op-ed would go. Tom Cotton says to Ted Cruz, whew, we totally avoid that disaster, Ted. And Marco Rubio, who likes those earned income tax credits and all the other big federal programs, even though he's supposedly a conservative, he says, woof, yeah, we certainly did. Hillary wanted to spend $10 trillion because of that Chinese flu. We're doing what Sweden's doing. We're not doing any of that. Our economy's going to take a 3% hit. Not 10, not 12, not having a down 20% quarter. Everybody just go to work. America never shuts down. That's what we're telling people. It never shuts down. America didn't shut down in 1943. It didn't shut down in 1812, for crying out loud. And so Pat Toomey, my friend from the Club for Growth, who raised like a couple of $1 million for me to run for the Senate, he says, yes, woof, this is so great. We stopped it. We had 53 U.S. senators. We stopped all the spending. Only Susan Collins left the flank. We got 52 votes. We saved America. What happened if Hillary Clinton? And you watch. Whoever's left as a Republican, you watch. If there's a President Biden, there are going to be 48 U.S. senators, Republicans. They're all going to try to balance the budget. And they're all going to think that you're stupid. That you don't remember what they actually did. That over the period of President Trump being president, they ran up collectively, and all U.S. senators agreed, all Republican U.S. senators agreed to spend an extra $10 trillion. And if you want to just see what it is again, go to Fixing America. I mean, all this stuff I've done, I've talked about. People say, well, what do you think about this, Steve? I've talked about it for 15 friggin' years. Listen to what I'm saying. It's not that it's going to happen in the future. It's happening now. Now listen, I've been blessed to be smart enough to know how to invest in these things well before they happen. That's why I'm still sitting here, not having to work for anybody else. Hopefully it continues, if God continues it. It's been a great blessing. But the average person can't do what I do. They weren't schooled the way I was. They didn't spend 30 years on this. They didn't sit on trading desks. They didn't work at Paineware, but they didn't help run an investment banking firm. They didn't run a venture capital operation. They're not like, I get attached to people over certain things. I never get attached to investments. That's a whole other topic. But I realize that the average middle class person's going like this. Slowly but surely, 1955. Look at all the houses in Eden Park. Go drive by them again. They got one garage. You know why? The husband went to work. The wife stayed home. They sent their kids to URI. Everything was okay. That was the middle class. By 1980, 1990, two people were working. Still struggling to make ends meet in Eden Park. I lived there when I was the mayor. That's what really happened. And it continues to happen. The erosion of the middle class. The unequal wealth. Where the hell is the president? Peter Thiel told him that Google is a Chinese operating company. Why haven't we done what Teddy Roosevelt would have done? I would break up the banks. No bank should have more than 1/2 or 1% of the assets of America. Large banks are extremely inefficient. Google, Facebook, all these companies are against America. They're against America. I'm not saying you don't use their products. What else are you going to do to get your message out? I'm saying we have to know they're against America. Where is the antitrust laws? I could go on all day about it, but this is a tragic mistake that my fellow Republicans are making. I am not a never Trumper. I'm not a never anything. I am a policy person who cares deeply about the 6 or 7 things I always talk about. You never see me talking about building a nuclear power plant, do you? I don't know how. I know how to fix the international problem. I know how to balance the budget. Go to the Fixing America Movie website. In 8 minutes, I balance it. Now that was when it was $600 billion. Or $800 billion. Now it's like $4 trillion? $4 trillion? Is anybody getting the message? This is destructive to your children. And if your children now are 30, they're not going to make it through. I mean, President Trump, what has he done about education? What's Betsy DeVos has done? Why are we not closing down the public schools or finding a way to defund them? Why are they chiming in on what has to happen within schools reopening? My school's reopening. The Laffey School reopens on the day after Labor Day. Did anybody not figure out that your children, many of your children don't behave properly? They don't understand what's going on? They all became liberal from conservative parents because no one paid attention to what they were being taught. Tragic. Who do you think's rioting in Portland? Bunch of white kids who went to Stanford or some crazy, who went to Harvard. That's who's really rioting. Not to get into white. I couldn't care what color people are, as everybody knows. But that's what's really going on. They actually want to bring down America. They're the product of an education system that needs to be shut down. And we've done nothing about it. These are the seminal issues of our time. The deficit, communist China, which is not even communist, by the way. They're a bunch of gangsters. Communist China's a gang. It's not communist. They're not Leninists. Go back and read your history. And we're becoming fascists. Go read about Mussolini. Which companies got the loans? Who's handling the Fed's buying of corporate bonds? BlackRock, the biggest buyers themselves? Really? Seriously? This is in America? Which companies are winning? Big companies. Which companies are losing? Small companies. Paula's company is losing. Cheesecake Factory's winning. CMG or whatever, Chipotle serving crappy food is winning. Big's crushing small. Inequality, wealth going like this. And here we sit, oh, I hope Trump wins. Really? Anyway, I'm done. Just play the tape, play it 5 times, and you'll know what I'm saying is true. And change everybody's act.